What if one of the greatest adventure stories ever written was never meant to be just a myth? For nearly 3,000 years, Homer's Odyssey has inspired countless books, films, and historians alike. It is a story filled with giant cyclopes, deadly sirens, sea monsters, and angry gods. To many people, it is simply one of the greatest works of fiction ever created. But in recent decades, archaeologists have uncovered evidence suggesting that beneath the legends lies something far more extraordinary. What if the Odyssey preserved fragments of real history? What if the kingdoms, the battles, and even the journey of Odysseus were inspired by events that actually happened more than 3,000 years ago? To answer that question, we have to travel back to an age long before classical Greece, before the Parthenon, before Alexander the Great, and even before the Olympic Games. We must return to the Bronze Age, a time when powerful warrior kings ruled fortified palaces across mainland Greece. Between roughly 1600 and 1100 BC, the Eastern Mediterranean was dominated by a civilization historians now call the Mycenaeans. Their cities were unlike anything Europe had seen before. Massive stone walls surrounded royal palaces perched high on rocky hills. Skilled craftsmen produced gold jewelry, bronze weapons, and beautifully decorated pottery. Merchant ships carried goods across the Aegean Sea, connecting Greece with Egypt, Anatolia, Cyprus, and the Near East. For centuries, however, this civilization was almost completely forgotten. The Greeks who lived hundreds of years later remembered only fragments of their ancestors' world. Those memories survived not in history books, but in songs passed from one generation of storytellers to another. Eventually, those stories became the epics attributed to Homer. Yet Homer himself remains one of history's greatest mysteries. No one knows exactly who he was. Ancient writers believed he lived around the 8th century BC, roughly 400 years after the collapse of the Mycenaean civilization. Some described him as a blind poet who traveled from city to city, reciting epic poems from memory. Others believed several poets gradually shaped the stories over generations before they were finally written down. Modern scholars still debate whether Homer was one extraordinary individual or simply a name attached to a long oral tradition. But regardless of who composed the poems, one fact is remarkable. The Iliad and the Odyssey contain details about the Bronze Age that later Greeks themselves had forgotten. Descriptions of armor, royal titles, weapons made of bronze, palaces filled with treasure, political customs that disappeared centuries before Homer supposedly lived. For a long time, many historians believed these details were nothing more than imagination. Then everything changed in the 19th century. A wealthy German businessman named Heinrich Schliemann became obsessed with proving that Homer's stories described real places. Most scholars laughed at him. They believed Troy existed only in legend. But Schliemann ignored the criticism. In 1870, he began excavating a large mound called Hisarlik in what is now northwestern Turkey. Beneath layers of earth, he uncovered the remains of several ancient cities built one on top of another. Although Schliemann made many mistakes and damaged important archaeological evidence through his aggressive digging methods, later excavations confirmed something astonishing. One of those buried cities matched the approximate location, size, and time period traditionally associated with ancient Troy. Today, the overwhelming majority of archaeologists agree that Hisarlik is indeed the site of the historical city that inspired Homer's Troy. That discovery changed everything. If Troy was real, could the Trojan War also have been real? According to Greek tradition, the conflict began when Paris, a prince of Troy, took Helen, the wife of King Menelaus of Sparta. Greek kings united under Agamemnon and launched a massive expedition across the Aegean Sea. After a 10-year siege, they finally captured Troy using the legendary Trojan horse. It is one of the most famous stories ever told. But archaeology paints a more complicated picture. Excavations show that Troy suffered destruction near the end of the Bronze Age. Burned buildings, collapsed walls, arrowheads, human remains, all point toward a violent conflict sometime around the late 13th or early 12th century BC. However, archaeology cannot confirm who attacked the city. It cannot prove that Achilles fought Hector. It cannot verify the existence of the famous wooden horse. Instead, historians believe the epic combines genuine historical memories with centuries of storytelling. Perhaps there was a war. Perhaps several wars. Perhaps Greek kingdoms fought repeatedly against wealthy cities controlling trade through the Dardanelles. Over generations, those conflicts merged into a single legendary tale remembered as the Trojan War. That possibility is what makes the Odyssey so fascinating. Unlike the Iliad, which focuses primarily on battle, the Odyssey tells the story of survival. Its hero is not remembered because he was the strongest warrior. He survives because he is clever. Odysseus defeats enemies through intelligence rather than brute force. He escapes impossible situations by thinking faster than everyone around him. This unusual portrayal has led many historians to wonder whether Odysseus represents the memory of a real Bronze Age ruler whose reputation for strategy grew larger with every generation that retold his story. The Odyssey describes Odysseus as the king of Ithaca, a small rocky island west of mainland Greece. Unlike the wealthy kingdoms ruled by Agamemnon or Menelaus, Ithaca was relatively isolated. Even today, its steep mountains and rugged coastline make travel difficult. For centuries, travelers searched the island hoping to discover traces of the palace described by Homer. Modern archaeology has indeed uncovered Mycenaean settlements throughout the Ionian Islands. Stone buildings, storage rooms, pottery, burial sites, and evidence of long-distance trade. These discoveries confirm that the region was inhabited by prosperous Bronze Age communities exactly when the traditional Trojan War is believed to have occurred. But no inscription has ever been found stating, "This was the palace of Odysseus." Instead, archaeologists rely on clues. The geography described in the poem. Ancient roads. Natural harbors. Ruins hidden beneath olive groves. Each discovery brings new excitement, but also new debate. Some researchers argue that the modern island of Ithaca perfectly matches Homer's descriptions. Others believe the real kingdom may have been located on neighboring Kephallonia or another nearby island whose coastline has changed dramatically over thousands of years due to earthquakes and geological activity. The search continues because the Mediterranean itself has changed since the Bronze Age. Sea levels have shifted. Earthquakes have reshaped coastlines. Harbors have disappeared beneath sediment. Entire settlements now lie buried beneath centuries of later construction. Finding the exact homeland of a ruler who may have lived over 3,000 years ago is an extraordinary challenge. Yet despite these uncertainties, one fact has become increasingly difficult to ignore. The world described in the Odyssey is no longer dismissed as pure fantasy. Yet despite these uncertainties, one fact has become increasingly difficult to ignore. The world described in the Odyssey is no longer dismissed as pure fantasy. Over the past century, archaeologists have uncovered royal palaces at Mycenae, Pylos, Turin, and Thebes. They have deciphered Linear B, the earliest known form of written Greek, proving that a sophisticated Greek-speaking civilization existed centuries before Homer was thought to have lived. Clay tablets record inventories of livestock, weapons, taxes, and palace administration, revealing an organized society ruled by powerful kings. These discoveries confirmed that the Mycenaean world was not a legend, but a real civilization whose memory survived long after its collapse. Around 1200 BC, however, that civilization came to a sudden end. Across the eastern Mediterranean, great kingdoms began disappearing. Cities were destroyed by war, earthquakes, famine, political unrest, or some combination of all four. International trade collapsed. Palaces were abandoned. Literacy disappeared from mainland Greece for several centuries, beginning a period historians often call the Greek Dark Age. When writing vanished, history survived only through memory. Stories were passed from one generation to the next by singers who preserved the names of ancient kings and distant wars. Every retelling added new details. Heroes became stronger. Villains became more terrifying. Ordinary storms became the anger of Poseidon himself. This process helps explain why the Odyssey contains both believable geography and impossible creatures. Take the Cyclops, for example. The one-eyed giant Polyphemus is one of the most famous characters in Greek mythology. Yet historians believe this story may have originated from something far less supernatural. Ancient people occasionally discovered fossilized skulls of extinct dwarf elephants on Mediterranean islands. The large opening in the center of these skulls, where the trunk had once been attached, could easily be mistaken for the eye socket of a gigantic one-eyed creature. Combined with stories of isolated island tribes, such discoveries may have inspired the legend of the Sirens. Offer another example. Rather than literal creatures whose songs enchanted sailors, they may symbolize dangerous coastal rocks or hidden reefs where countless ships were lost. Ancient sailors often explained deadly natural hazards through mythology because they lacked scientific knowledge of tides, currents, and underwater obstacles. Even the terrifying monsters Scylla and Charybdis may reflect real geography. In the narrow Strait of Messina between Sicily and mainland Italy, powerful currents and whirlpools have challenged sailors for thousands of years. Navigating those waters in Bronze Age ships would have been extremely dangerous. Over generations, these hazards may have evolved into stories of sea monsters waiting to devour passing vessels. The Lotus Eaters, the island of Aeolus, and even the floating rocks encountered during the voyage may also preserve memories of unfamiliar cultures and distant coastlines encountered by Mycenaean sailors exploring the Mediterranean. None of this proves that Odysseus personally experienced these events. Instead, it suggests that real voyages gradually transformed into epic adventures as stories were retold over centuries. Perhaps the greatest mystery remains Odysseus himself. Was he a real king? No archaeological discovery has yet answered that question. No palace bears his name. No royal inscription records his victories. No contemporary document confirms his existence. Yet history is filled with individuals known only through later traditions. The absence of evidence is not necessarily evidence of absence. If a minor island ruler lived more than 3,000 years ago, the chances of finding direct proof today are remarkably small. Most Bronze Age records have long since decayed, while earthquakes, wars, and later construction have destroyed countless archaeological sites. For that reason, many historians take a cautious position. They do not claim that Odysseus was entirely fictional. Nor do they argue that every event in the Odyssey actually happened. Instead, they believe the character may represent the combined memories of several Bronze age leaders whose exploits gradually merged into one legendary hero. This would explain why the Odyssey feels both historical and mythical at the same time. It remembers real kingdoms, real trade routes, real political systems, and real geography, while surrounding them with gods, monsters, and miracles that reflect the beliefs of ancient storytellers. That combination is precisely what makes the poem extraordinary. It is not simply a fantasy. Nor is it a literal historical record. It stands somewhere between the two, preserving echoes of a vanished civilization that archaeology is still uncovering today. Every excavation at Troy, every Mycenaean palace brought to light, and every Bronze Age artifact recovered from the soil adds another small piece to the puzzle Homer left behind nearly 3 millennia ago. The Odyssey has endured not because it answers every question, but because it continues to ask them. Who was Homer? Was there truly a Trojan War? Did a clever king named Odysseus once rule a small island kingdom in the Ionian Sea? Or are these stories the collective memory of an entire civilization that disappeared into history? Archaeology has already shown that many places once dismissed as myth were, in fact, real. Perhaps future discoveries will reveal even more. Until then, the Odyssey remains one of history's greatest mysteries, a timeless blend of fact and legend that bridges the gap between mythology and the ancient world. More than 3,000 years after its story first echoed across the shores of Greece, it continues to inspire explorers, historians, archaeologists, and millions of readers who still wonder whether one man's impossible journey home was, at least in part, based on a remarkable truth.